Hi, Dick.
Hey, Bob.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Very good. Any late breaking news for 5520?
Don't be surprised at anything you hear. I talked to Linda the other day, and she wasn't sure what direction she was going to go.
Okay.
So he may still be membership chair. I told her that I would spend time with him this weekend at Pets, and I would do everything that I possibly can to bring him up to speed. And he will not. The one thing he won't do is leave there feeling like he's been ignored. He may.
Yeah, right.
He may figure out that it's way more than he was told. But hey,
Yep.
at
Hey,
that
Kelly.
point,
Hey,
it's
Bob.
his decision.
Hey, guys.
Does she have another candidate in mind besides Barry?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm doing the presentations at Pets,
Yeah.
and I'm just basically going to use the club SAM and
Yeah.
present that and give them a little bit of background and update. I think we have a total of 30 minutes, so
Great. We're getting a little buzz feedback.
I thought you were shaving.
No. So I'm going to mute you individually. Okay. Bob, that's coming from you. Bob Delavan. Excuse me, Bob Dill. Still getting that feedback, Bob. I don't know what's going on there. Okay, I'll. Yeah, Bob, why don't you keep yourself, I'm going to mute you, and then you see if you can unmute yourself. We're up to 12 participants. Thanks for joining us. We're waiting for Sherry to join us. Let's see if she's on the line here. Poor panelist. Let me see who the attendance guys are. Oh, there she is right now. Allowed to talk. Promote to panelist. Sherry, you are now a panelist. We ought to be able to hear you now, Sherry. Oh, you got yourself muted, young lady. Unmute. Now try. Sherry? Okay. We got her unmuted and we promoted her to panelist. Welcome, Betty, Jack, Jackson, Jim, Lawrence, Marie Baker. Welcome to you. I see you here. We're working. Sherry, are you? I know you're with your bandwidth problem. Are you working to call in? Yeah, she says, I am talking, but you can't hear me. That is correct. We can't. Going to ask her if she's calling in by phone. You don't need a participation ID when you call in, Sherry. Let me see if there's any. Okay, I've just promoted you to co-host, Sherry. The rest of you will just be patient. We'll get this taken care of. We're still a little bit early, so appreciate your patience. I will do that, Bob. Bob Dill, I'm speaking with. I'll do that. See, we've got Larry Petrash with us. That's great. William Philpott. That's great. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I haven't redialed. The first thing it asks me is for the participation ID to press the number. When I press the number, it tells me I am attending and muted throughout the meeting. I need to use the phone. So she's saying that she needs to use the phone to do her presentation. And let me see how that's going to work here. So let me see if I can. She's on there and she's on. She should be on here. Okay, so what I need you to do then, Sherry, is this. Disconnect. Total of 3 call-in listeners. Hang on just a minute. Let me see if we can figure this out. I don't show you at all on the call-in list, Sherry. I show you on the other. I show you on the video. And I see the same thing. I see you on the panelist list. Okay, hang on just a minute, folks. We'll get right underway when we get this figured out.
Love technology and I hate technology, all depending on whether it supports us or not. But thank you all for joining. We'll kick off tonight by taking a quick look at where we stand membership-wise in our paired zones. Picture looks a bit better than it did a month ago. In that overall, we've the two paired zones have turned back to the green. We're up 0.06%. We've got a number of districts that were red last month who have turned green, and shout out to those of you who have been able to manage that. Big shout out to District 5790 that has stayed green now for 4 consecutive years and green again so far this year. So keep doing what you're doing. This is really critical time of year for us to really build our clubs, strengthen our clubs, to help them be more vibrant, more engaging, and particularly, as we've talked about over and over again, retaining the members that they have, so that at the end of this year we don't see that kind of clean out of the rosters again, but instead we see the work that we've been putting in to help retain those members we have and those members who are coming in. So, Kelly, anything you want to add to the charts before we move forward?
The only thing I would like to add, Sherry, is 5790. You're on fire. You are on fire. I'm so impressed with that. 4 consecutive years of growth. Congratulations on that.
And I would be very remiss as well if I didn't call out 5730, who after the long streak of red has maintained that green position. So we're looking forward to seeing how your year ends, but you certainly have turned the tide, and we appreciate that very much, and we're real proud of you. So I see a hand up. Charles Starnes.
Charles, just speak.
Kelly.
Okay, here I am, District Governor 5730, and yes, we're working real hard. We have set co-chairs for our membership, one to cover the northern half of our district, the other the southern half of the district. Both of them have gone to training. Both of them will be at PETS. We're going to get some good coverage there with the perspective, with the presidents-elect. And we're going to push hard to stay green through June. You know, you've always got that end of the year slide, but we're working hard to do it. I'm done.
And well, we're proud of you and your team, and you took a new approach, and it looks like it's doing really well for you. So I'm proud of you, proud of the team, and you just keep on going the way you're going. So anyone else who would like to add anything to that discussion? Okay, Kelly, I think it's up to you now to give an overview of tonight, and then we'll get started.
Well, we're happy to have Sherry with us tonight. She always does such a great job on everything that she touches, and it's my great honor and privilege to have the opportunity to work with her. All of you know that she was an amazing governor and grew her district, one of just a handful of districts in the world that grew that year, recognized, and she's also been, by every measure that you could measure by, an exceptional partner and coordinator for zones 21B and 27. And she's going to talk a little bit about the flexibilities that we have as far as corporate membership. And so with that, Sherry, you're on.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm really glad that we got the technology worked out so y'all could hear me. So one of the topics that was identified back in December when we had an open meeting and talked about topics that would be of value and interest to all of our participants was some conversation about offering corporate membership and sharing of some of the best practices, and then kicking off some discussion between us about ways that we might approach that. So I'd like to just lay a little groundwork before we start, and remind you all that the Council on Legislation in 2016, that body of representatives from one representative from every district in the Rotary world came together, and I had the real privilege to be an observer that year. So I got to sit in the back of the room and watch what was going on, listen to the debates, and see the progressive and very forward-thinking group of individuals who came to that council. And in particular, there were two enactments that set the scene for what we're going to talk about tonight. The first was the enactment to allow for flexibility in membership. So I want to remind you all that this is an option. It is not a requirement. Each and every club decides how they want to manage this. They can stay with this traditional type of membership exclusively if they like. They can, but they also, each and every club has now the opportunity to use some creative thinking and flexibility in setting some requirements for membership, including the types and the structure of the membership for a club. That enactment also talked about how former transferring and honorary members are managed. We're not going to talk about that tonight. We're going to focus on that types and structure of the club's membership. And that same enactment was very, very clear that it's the club that chooses this. And they either keep the requirements in the RI bylaws and club constitution, or they are allowed to modify the club bylaws to meet the requirements that they feel would best fit on their membership. The second enactment revised provisions for membership and really allowed flexibility in the qualifications for a member and the composition of clubs. So while the focus is still on having a balance of membership, representing the look and feel of the community, so the businesses in the community, the professions in the community, but added that real key, I think, in the community organizations. And if you go back and look at this provision and read all of the verbiage in it, what it did is really simplify the requirements from the RI bylaws and RI constitution and standard club constitution, from that long list of 6 or 7 criteria that we had before. You know, has to be a business owner or a professional, can be a community volunteer. That list is just growing and growing, and the council said, let's simplify it, and let's just say that the individuals who join a Rotary Club need to be adults of good standing in the community with an interest in improving the local community and the world by making our world a better place. I didn't quote that word for word. I kind of summarized the meaning of it. If you go back and look at this, you'll see the word for word. But it took out that long list of you have to be this and you have to be that. And instead said, each and every club knows what they need in their club. Each and every club knows the kind of people that they want in their club. And each and every club knows how to create a balance if we just give them flexibility. So with that kind of framework on the Council on Legislation and those two in particular provisions, let's move to talking about what that actually means, because I think one of the biggest questions that comes out of this is, how do we report these people and who are they in as far as Rotary International is concerned? So this graphic kind of gives you what I hope will be a framework for what we're going to talk about next. As far as Rotary International is concerned, there are two types of members. There's an active member, there's an honorary member. Frankly, Rotary International does not care if the active member is a corporate member, a family member, an associate member, or whatever other word you want to, or type of membership that you want to offer. What Rotary International cares about is that you are reporting an individual who will be an active member, and by that means that they'll pay RI dues, they'll pay, the club will pay RI dues for them, they'll pay district dues for them. The individual has the right to hold a club office, the individual has the right to vote on club business, and the active member counts in RI reports, including calculations for presidential citations, so +1, +2, whatever. That's an active member. Non-honorary member didn't change very much. Doesn't pay RI dues, cannot hold club office, cannot vote on club business, and is not counted in RI reports as a member of the club, although they are their names are identified at Rotary International. So I'm going to pause for just a minute because sometimes this raises a question before we start talking about best practices in corporate memberships. I just will pause for a minute, see if there are any hands up that have questions about active and honorary in relation to the new types of membership categories that we might have in our clubs. And Kelly, if you'll help me keep checking for hands up, I'd really appreciate that.
I'm looking right now, and I don't see for our ARCs. You can just simply unmute yourself and participate in the discussion at any time. So you don't have to raise your hand if you have a comment. And for our attendees, if you'll just raise your hand. I don't see any hands being raised right now, Sherry. So.
Okay, so we'll move on from this. We might come back to this slide if it helps us as we start talking about these.
So did we lose Sherry? Sherry, did we lose you? I can see you moving your cursor, but we've lost your sound.
About this in terms of who's missing from our Rotary Club. Are there large corporations or even smaller corporations who just don't have a presence in our Rotary Club, but have a presence in our community and ought to be part of what we do? Are there family members that just are missing, aren't there? Are there individuals who are thinking maybe they'd like to join, they're not really sure, their job may take them away in 3 or 6 months? Maybe you want to build a category of membership that has a shorter term expectation, associate member, et cetera, et cetera. The sky is the limit. It depends on your club what you want to call all of these options. So for moving from that, we're going to talk about corporate membership because that was the topic that y'all had indicated would be very valuable to you. And I'm going to try to simplify it in my own view. I see corporate membership as a membership where the business supports the club. So in our traditional individual memberships, we individually support our Rotary Club. We support it with the dues we pay. We support it with the service that we do. We support our Rotary Foundation, our club our club fundraisers, et cetera, et cetera. In the case of a corporate membership, what most clubs who are embracing this idea are doing is moving that support to the business rather than to the individual. So on the screen, if you're someone who's joined us, joined the webinar by computer, you can see a sample of a flyer that one club created in order to go out and recruit corporate memberships. And I included this because I really appreciate how they offered it as an opportunity for the organization to help develop corporate social responsibility policies, to help to enhance the leadership opportunities of staff members, as an opportunity for the corporation at large to give back to the community, and an opportunity to make links with an organization that provides much more, as we all know, than just networking. And yet also the implication of that last bullet point is that networking is also a part of what the corporation can benefit from. So it's really a symbiotic relationship, because it's not just the Rotary Club that benefits, it is the corporation as well. It does require change to the club bylaws. That bylaws would then call out what is a corporate membership, how are the costs for that determined, how many members will be, how many members of that corporation will be reported members, meaning that they will need to, the club will need to make sure that they've considered the cost. The district dues are going to be RI dues, club operation expense will be times the number of actual members that you report out of the corporate membership. And it's the team that joins the club. In many cases, they share attendance and they share service project participation. But a really important thing to remember is if you report that individual as an active member, and it counts as, having added a new member to your club, then that individual has the voting rights and has the right to hold club office. So what does that all mean? Let's talk for a minute about 3 examples of
Sherry, before you make that transition, George has had his hand up, so let's let him ask the question. Go ahead, George. George? I've unmuted you. Have you muted you on that end? I've unmuted you. Okay, he's muted himself.
Okay.
Oh, there you are, my friend. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Have a club that expressed a concern because they couldn't maintain their corporate identity. In other words, you have to report as an individual, and so the corporate identity disappears. So is there a way to allow that to happen?
Yeah, so I'd like to be able to say that that's solved already, but our IT is on the RI level is a little bit behind the council decision. I suspect that in time we will actually be able to report the corporation, perhaps with the individual name behind it or in front of it, but right now we don't have that option. One of the solutions that some clubs have done is, let's say they have 2 individuals that are the active members. Maybe it's just for the sake of argument, say it's the CEO and maybe one of the senior level managers. And if that individual moves, then the corporation just names a new person. That new name is entered at RI. But you correctly identified that right now it does have to be tracked by an individual name at the RI level. Many clubs are keeping track of it by the corporate name.
Yeah,
Does
even
that
if,
help?
well, even if in this case, even if they wanted to have two individual dues paying, but they wanted to try to maintain their corporate identity, it's still problematic.
Yeah. So I did a presentation about this, and I had someone say, do you think the RI would reject a member whose name was first name Exxon, last name Corporation?
Yeah. Yep. I thought about that. Yeah, that was an idea.
So I don't think they're policing that too much, and I think I can't speak for them, but I thought that was a rather clever way to resolve it until our IT catches up. So hopefully that helps a little bit, George.
No, well, yeah, the discussion was there, but no solution.
Yeah. So any other hands up, Kelly, or shall I move into some examples that I think might be of interest to everyone on the webinar tonight?
I don't see any other hands up. And again, ARCs, all you've got to do to join the conversation is unmute yourself. Oh, wait, one hand just went up. Marie, I've unmuted you. You ought to be able to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Great. I think the one thing that I've been thinking about with the corporation name, Sherry, as you indicated, I think one thing to be especially concerned about is that we do want those individual members of the corporation to have a sense that they are Rotary members, and hopefully maybe we can put their name in and then add the corporation, because if we just make it, for example, Exxon Corp, Susan Smith, who's a Rotary member, will not, in my opinion, think that she really belongs to Rotary. So it really, I think I would like us to all think through what our goal is in terms of what we're looking for when someone comes to our clubs, because we do want people who feel like they're part of it as well as part of their corporation. So I think we have to think through some of the things that we do and be very intentional with making sure that person feels like they are a Rotarian as well. Just an
well,
observation.
I appreciate that, and I'm going to use that as a segue into one of the examples. So, as many of you might recall, there was long ago a pilot program that tested out some, or allowed some clubs to test out some of the alternative types of membership. And so I identified one club that has actually had corporate membership for over 5 years. At this point, they report that they have 17 members from 6 corporations. Each one of them is paid RI dues, district dues, paid for each one of the corporate members as though they were ordinary members, or in other words, they are active members, each of the 17. That's the way that they looked at this, and that's the way they developed it. Their club felt that it would be valuable for them if they found at least one corporate partner for every industry or field that was in their city. So they went out and they devoted time to recruiting bankers, higher education, some of the industries in their city, and ended up with 6 corporations that engaged in this process. They used a kind of interesting approach, Marie, to your point, about how to engage the individuals, because when they went out and talked to the corporations, they said, which one of our projects is of most interest to your corporation? And if we don't have a project that you are interested in, what project would you be interested in helping us develop? So so they got a lot of enthusiasm built before they started actually joining. However, they were very honest about the downside of it. And they said the downside is that they're enthusiastic, they're great contributors, but we don't always have their attention because they're really involved in their corporation. They have extensive time commitments at work. Coming to a regular lunch meeting isn't easy for them. And sometimes, to Marie's point, they just felt like this was something else their corporation did and not something they actually belonged to. So this club developed a corporate team, and the corporate team meets quarterly with all the corporate members. And they meet at a time when those 17 members all find a time and place where they can meet together. And they provide updates on what's happening, and they identify perhaps some new ways that they can cooperate. So their takeaway from this is it's not just about getting 17 new members. It's about the engagement, the perseverance, the focus that the club has to put on the expectations that corporate members have in order to develop that close relationship with them. And one of the comments that I really appreciated was that they said it's better to get prospective corporate members excited in projects first rather than just focusing on adding members. But in spite of the challenges, they felt that corporate membership has been highly beneficial to their club, and they're really excited about adding new organizations. So I understand what you're saying, Marie, and I think it's an important thing to reemphasize is that when your clubs are thinking about adding corporate membership as a membership type to the club, it's important to think about what's the goal. Is the goal to grow the club, to get more active members in? Then that's one approach. Is the goal to diversify the participation of the community at large, the talents, the professions that are represented in the community, because you just feel like too many of them are missing? Then that's a different kind of thought process that the club goes through. Or maybe it's to build better relationships with a local business or create partnerships with local businesses. So corporate membership has a downside in that it very often is a high turnover. And so I also think it's important to think through how will you manage the individual who moves on or who retires, or another one of the clubs that has really spent some time on it and developed it is that is a club out of Indianapolis, and what they have decided is that every corporation can nominate up to 2 individuals to be active members of the club. One is designated as the executive member, the other is a regular member. Both are in RI's records active members. But if one of them moves or transfers or retires, then they have 2 options. They can convert their membership to an individual membership, or of course, like any Rotarian, they could choose to leave the club. But the corporation has the right now to name 1 more person to be part of the corporate membership team. So they have found that very successful and have added individual Rotarians who choose to opt out of the corporate membership for whatever reason, and yet maintain the same number of active members from the corporation. So I've done a lot of talking. I would now like to hear some of the questions that you all have and the ideas that you have. So Kelly, for the discussion part, I'm going to turn it over to you, and if I can help in any way answer questions or add to the discussion, I'm here and happy to do so.
You just go ahead and just add whatever you have to, Sherry, when the questions are asked. So if you've got a question, now's the time to ask it regarding corporate memberships. I think that was a really nice overview on corporate memberships. I can just tell you we just initiated a corporate membership in our club, and for the first initiation, I think it's working quite well. But I think what Sherry talked about is key. At the outset, we told the corporate member, you're only going to have one person that's going to be a member of record, and that was fine because the gentleman that joined was the CEO, so he was happy to be the member of record. And then he has another associate in his office that attends when he can. So right now it's working pretty good, but we've only experimented with this one corporate member. I don't see any hands coming up. I don't see any questions in addition. Is there anyone that would like to make any other comments? Oh, one hand, there it is. Okay, Marie, go ahead, just speak up.
Well, I'm going to share with what our club has done. We've initiated corporate memberships as well, and we actually have 2 corporate members right now, and ours is structured. They pay for RI district and local dues for 2 members, and then we're a lunch club, so they pay for 1 lunch. So they alternate, or if both of them come, we have a different system for that. But for the most part, that's worked really well because we usually have 1 person from both engaged. One corporate member group, we just initiated this last August, I think. And the reason I brought up the engaged member is we had one person who left the corporation and is working for someone else, but still wants to continue to be a Rotarian. So the corporation is dealing with, they have a vacant membership spot and finding someone in their corporation to join Rotary, but the person that was there still wants to be a Rotarian. So I guess that's the connection I'm trying to make. There are some incredible benefits to having the corporations come in. A lot of our members, the corporations do pay for them already, but I do think we can go one step further in terms of developing community partnerships, and then you become very strategic, but there's an investment in them creating impact with our Rotary Club into the community. Again, being mindful that we're working with people, and if we can engage them in the project, even if they move to a different town or a different community, we would want them to want to continue to be a Rotarian.
Exactly. That's what it's all about. Of course, we'd like our own clubs to grow and prosper, but it's about putting more Rotarians into the trenches so that we can do more good in the world. So great comments, Marie. Any other comments regarding corporate membership or any other questions you might have? I don't see any hands. So Sherry, let's go to the next slide, if you will. Now, this is your time, your open time to share what's on your mind. And I'm just going to start the conversation out by saying, when we look at those numbers, and we're very satisfied with the numbers that are coming into this point, and the number of green districts. And obviously, governors, and we have a number of you on the line tonight. I've tried to reach out and recognize every governor that was on the line tonight. Know this. The first thing that we think membership chairs and governors that you ought to be stressing is that there will be a clean out at the end of the year. And that clean out takes place. Membership chairs, if you can get clubs to do that on a monthly basis, it's going to mitigate the loss at the end of the year if you can do it club by club, indicating to them to get that information in as they lose members. That will mitigate your loss. it's been my experience that if you're not somewhere in the neighborhood of in March, if you're, in May, if you're not somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 members up, you're going to be in the negative on July 1 because of the clean out. So the more that you can do to get your clubs to clean out, your club secretaries to clean out immediately, the less your loss is going to be at the end of the year. So I just put that on the radar screen for you. Now it's an open mic. It's for any of you to ask any questions that you would like to ask. For some reason, Sherry, we've lost your PowerPoint. You're black on the screen. So if you could see if you can put that back up on the screen, that would be great. And who would like to make other comments on anything? It just doesn't have to pertain to corporate memberships or what I've just talked about, on anything that you would like to share with the group.
Kelly, this is Bob Delavan. As an ARC, I think it would be beneficial, and I know that you send out, or there's an automatic email that's sent out to people that have registered for this. I think if it would be beneficial if we could send it out maybe a week ahead of time with the topic that's going to be discussed. Would that be likely? Is that possible?
It is possible. And let me tell you what happened this month and why you didn't get a email in advance of last night. We're trying out webinar over the meeting schedule. And for some reason, when we signed up for it, because we don't know how long we're going to keep it based on our participation, we'll make that determination. My credit card information didn't go through on the renewal. And so they simply, I don't remember getting any email, but I'm in the busiest time of my season. So they turned it off until last night. Fortunate, I was checking on it last night, Sherry, fortunately, and discovered that they had turned it off. And therefore, I worked last night until about midnight to get it up and running. But that's why you didn't receive the notices with what the subject matter was going to be for the discussion tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Going forward, you should get an update. Marie, I thought you had your, no, it was Charles. Charles, I'm unmuted. You go ahead.
Well, thanks, Kelly. You know, your mention of the clean out that happens at the end of the year has bit District 5730 4 out of the last 6 years. A lot of my predecessors felt that they were maybe going to make it, maybe going to break that negative slide at 5730, and we've fallen 3 short and 4 short, and well, last year it was 115 short. But in any event, you know, that's one of the elements, is communicating with the secretaries and the presidents to help keep things going, keep their roles up to date. And if they know what their role is, you know, that helps motivate them to get their own membership team cooking in their community.
Absolutely. I think that's an excellent point. And my experience has been that most secretaries don't really understand the importance of keeping their role current when they're paying semi-annual dues. They're saying, well, why can't I just handle that at semi-annual dues? But once you bring it to their attention that we're tracking that and using that to determine where we are in the district, and that has an impact, like true Rotarians that they are, they start to comply with it. And so the more you can impress that upon the minds of your secretaries at this juncture, when we're only talking about now the 1st of March, the better off you're going to be. Because if they prepare like they usually do in June to drop 2 and 3 and 4 people off their rolls, there's just no way that you can recover from that.
That's right. And I'd like to point out something else. I did an audit of what's called RI member synchronization for Club Runner. I just did a sample of a few of our clubs, and there wasn't a single club that had a perfect score on RI synchronization. One of our larger clubs had almost a 20% error rate. 20% of members that didn't match between Club Runner and Rotary International's database. Some of them were people who were terminated but still showed on Club Runner. Some were people that showed on Club Runner but not RI. That's problematic. And then there are others that showed on RI but not on the Club Runner. So there's a lot of errors. Now, one club tried to fix it. So they said, well, in order to fix this, Rotary International requires that we know the termination date within 30 days. And, well, you don't necessarily know what date RI processed something. So they were just randomly guessing and guessing wrong. So here's the crux. I email Rotary International Club Support saying, hey, can you help us find your official termination dates of these particular members with these member numbers so that we can get our Club Runner roster straight for this club? Well, guess what, folks? That was 3 weeks ago, and nothing has been heard from Rotary International. Those poor folks in Evanston are so overwhelmed with the communications coming in that they're just not getting to it. They're not supporting the clubs. So I would like to offer that as an observation of something that we need to discuss with the folks in Evanston. Thank you, and I am done on that one.
That's great. We'll take that back and share that. Sherry and I'll take that back and share that. Usually Julie's on the call. I neglected. It was my responsibility to excuse her. She's on her way back to over to New Zealand, which is her other part of the world that she represents. George, you had your hand up, so I'm going to unmute you and ask your question.
There we go. Yes, along those same lines that Charles was mentioning. Let's see, I am muted.
No,
am I good?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, very good. Along the lines that Charles was saying, is that Club Runner has now worked to develop notification to clubs if their synchronization does not go through, so that it avoids this problem of not knowing, and they have a whole a sequence of who gets notified. In other words, you start with the secretary, but then it's the next person down the line, because that has been a problem. We encountered some of that last fall, and where they weren't synchronized, the club actually thought that members were terminated. They weren't. They were on RI rolls. They got billed for it. You know what kind of mess that creates. So they developed this notification that will be done on a regular basis to help clubs know what's going up. And Club Runner, actually, if you call them, they can actually see the RI files as well as the Club Runner files and help reconcile particularly sticky issues that you have that can't be resolved at the club level. So that's just something that something's just been out the last, I would say, 30 days.
Great. Thanks so much for that comment. Any other comments anyone wants to make on any subject matter that pertains to membership?
Kelly, I'd just like to jump in for a minute on this discussion about clubs not keeping their roster up to date. It works in both directions. Sometimes they fail to put a new member in, which means the new member is not getting all of the information that they should be getting, including the Rotarian magazine. So I think it's helpful just to make that reminder that in fairness to the new member, the faster we get their name in the system, the better off we are. But I think the bigger problem, as we've identified tonight, is that frequently I'll do that sometime at the end of May or early June, or maybe even on June 30th, just to straighten out the billing. And, it doesn't really matter for the 6 months that the person might no longer be a Rotarian. But I think one perhaps helpful idea is to also remind the club that if the individual left a Rotary Club and moved jobs, changed residence, whatever, if they choose then to join a new club, the new club can't transfer that member number over to the new club. So frequently, a new number gets entered, and the individual's history, not only as a Rotarian, but also in their giving to the foundation, is broken. And I know this from personal experience because it happened to my husband and I. And suddenly one day we realized that we had 3 different Rotary ID numbers and 3 different foundation accounts, and we were still registered. I mean, I guess this was helpful to the club. We were still registered as members of the club that we had originally joined and had left like 14 years ago. So it's just helpful for people to understand there's a bigger ramification than just, we're not just knocking on your door asking you to do computer work for no reason. There are ramifications to the individual Rotarian as well. And I just throw that out as an idea of how we might help begin that education of our club secretaries and club presidents to follow up on it so that we get better numbers all year long.
Okay, we've got about 6 minutes left in our webinar call, and Marie has her question up. Great comments, by the way, Sherry. Go ahead, Marie. Marie, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Here. Okay, there we go. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, great. Well, I actually was going to bring up Sherry's point regarding it works the other way. We have quite a few clubs here that have not put members on because I'm not sure why. I hear that, that we've added 3 new members, and I said, well, you're down 2. But the key thing that I'm stressing, and it is, as Sherry said, they don't get the RI magazine. They do not get any communication from the district, and they really don't feel like they're Rotarians. So I'm really working, and we will be training on this actually. And another thing is, I just thought of this, Sherry, so thank you for bringing it up, but it would be great for all of us to do is to train the secretaries when someone does leave and we know the community that they're going to, we can use the RI Leads program to key them in with their old number to that area. So that's another way to make sure that we keep the Rotarian engaged. They may not be in our club, but if they're moving to another community, odds are there's a Rotary Club there, and we can take it one step further. Just a thought.
Great.
Yeah.
Good
yeah, a great idea. And I think, Marie, you're right on target that very often rules just seem arbitrary and people don't understand why. But when we explain the ramifications and how it can enhance individuals' feeling about belonging, etc., that's really valuable. It really scares me when I hear that we have members of a Rotary Club that aren't reported to RI, because there's something inherently wrong in that, and certainly, in my opinion, doesn't meet the 4-way test. So that's
right.
A really scary thought.
I've actually am using the strategy as I talk to the 43 clubs that I really want to start celebrating their victories, and it's really hard to do that when I don't see it in the data. I said, I can't celebrate your victories based on what someone said that, oh, we inducted 3 members, yet it's 3 weeks later and they're not here. So.
Yeah, great point.
Great point. That is a great point. Okay, this is the last call. Last call for anyone else that wants to make a final comment before we end our webinar. So, Sherry, if you go to the next slide, all I want to say is that a lot of times when we're talking about our memberships and we break it down in greens, yellows, and reds, we forget to stop and say that as long as we're working to build the clubs at the club level, we ought to be encouraged by that. And so we need to keep pushing down the membership guide to the club level, keep encouraging them to create a SAM, a plan, and then accountability and commitment. And if we work that plan, I am confident that it's going to start turning around our numbers. We didn't get in this predicament overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. So make sure, governors, I'm confident that you're doing this, and membership chairs, that as we're pointing out the ebb and flow of membership, that we're also putting a healthy dose of encouragement and also providing the tools in order for them to be successful. Sherry?
Well, thank you very much, Kelly. I'm really looking forward to being with those of you who will be at Lone Star Pets this weekend. And since I get the last word tonight, I just want to share this one thought with you. In my opinion, the gift I was given the day that I was invited to join Rotary is the most valuable gift I've had in my life. I even say it in front of my husband. Best decision I ever made was to join Rotary. Second best was to marry that guy. But the reason I feel that way, and I want to leave our meeting tonight with this thought. We talk a lot about numbers, and we talk a lot about red, yellow, and green. But the truth is, it isn't about the numbers. It's about the lives we change. It's about the lives we change of the beneficiaries of those we serve, but it's also about the way our own individual life changes. So I want to thank all of you again for joining tonight. Looking forward to seeing a lot of you this weekend. And Kelly and I really appreciate you giving us an hour out of your busy, busy schedules to join tonight. So, Kelly, if you unmute everybody, are there any hands up?
Nope, no hands up.
All righty. So thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Yeah. Night. Thanks for joining the call. And this call will be recorded and put up online.
Bye-bye.